Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Change of scenery here. We're in my kitchen today. Patrick and I are still trying to figure out some of the audio things that go on when you change your location for a broadcast, but I'm happy to be here. It's a nice Tuesday just outside Philadelphia, a little overcast. We've got some great questions. I thought we'd go over just a couple of mini things before we went into the questions, which are really great for today. Hope everyone is staying on top of all of their assignments and their photo taking and reviews from the family members who also enjoy eating what I like to say, your homework. So when Patrick and I were setting up, he wanted to know what the red aerosol can was that I had. And in my personal kitchen, I like to keep excuse me, a fire extinguisher because it's just a really good thing to have. And for those of you who are now teaching on the road or doing classes wherever you may go, you may want to add a portable fire extinguisher to your list because you never know what will happen. And having an extra ounce of prevention is always a good thing. They're not expensive. Patrick thought it was hairspray. I haven't used hairspray since I was in high school. So there's that first. And we'll go into some of the great questions that I have been receiving over these last few days. And it's always fun to read and see what everyone has to say. Loretta is interested to know about non-toxic pans. And everything that's old is new again. My mother gave me her now 75-year-old Revere ware stainless steel with copper bottoms, and I use them a lot. And when I got married, my mother gave me a set of Farberware pots and pans, which I still use today. They have no coating. They have nothing on them. They're just basic metal. You can pick up a stainless steel saute pan like this. This will be great for your mushroom no oil saute assignment. Um, Go to a place like Marshall's or TJ Maxx or Home Goods, and they run around $15. But I do want to point out one very important thing when you're shopping for pots and pans. For those of us who, quote, teach on the road, I use an induction stove top. I have my own portable. And the Charlie cart, for example, which you've heard me speak of, they also have an induction stovetop. And you have to check the bottom part. I don't know if you can see that or not, but on the bottom of the pan, there will be these little incantations. So I know that this is good on flame. I know it's good on electric. I know that it's good on induction stovetop. And that's what I want to look for because I don't want to show up to a place to do a cooking demo and realize that I brought the wrong pot with me. So I think stainless steel is the winner. When I read about things like Teflon or other things like that, even using the correct utensils to stir them with can sort of help to, for lack of a better word, debride some of the coating and having it get into your food. I also like to use, excuse me, I have a cast iron pot that I use. It's also compatible with induction stovetop. That works very well. And also I have a couple of ceramic pots, which I love, but I always cook with skepticism when I use them. So I think that you have to look at what your cooking needs are and see what your storage is like, because you want to make certain that you can fit all 87 pieces of a pot set or whatever. I have a rather eclectic pot set because sometimes I'll see a pot on sale and think, oh my gosh, how could I ever live without that? But I'm going to give my big votes to stainless steel for today and shop around, start out, buy one at Marshall's or wherever, and work with it and see how you like it. Now, I will say that cleaning it has a little bit more of a challenge. And if you Google the method to clean stainless steel pots with a dryer sheet, vinegar, and soap, this is when you have really burnt the pan terribly with a terrible crust. That method really works very, very well for getting all of that stuff off of your pots. I think there's a chemical reaction with the vinegar to the soap. Some people use baking soda. So think of how our relatives before us cleaned their pots and pans, and they used a lot of scrubbing. So I think that's the other important ingredient to cooking with stainless steel. Loretta, that's a great question, and I'm always happy to answer it. And let us know if you begin to experiment using a stainless steel pot or pan. Very, very good. Excuse me. Our next question is from Tammy. And this is a great question. Tammy has a convection oven and she wants to know what kind of recipes she should be cooking with. And first I want to say, Tammy, I'm really jealous of you because my next oven will have a convection apparatus to it. Essentially, a convection oven is what an air fryer is. So I say that you can use it for whatever you want to, especially for things like roasting vegetables or baking some tofu or making a casserole so that there's that air circulating throughout. I often suggest to people to read very well the owner's manual so that you understand how your oven works and what it will do best with. But I'm going to say that if I had a convection oven, I would cook everything in the world in it. So that's a very, very good question. Excuse me. This next question is from Pierre, and he had atrial fibrillation. It's when your heartbeat is above 120 beats a minute. And in the last 5 years, he's following a whole food plant-based diet. Will this help me? And are there any recipes with this problem? Thank you in advance. Pierre, that is a highly medical, technical question that I really don't feel comfortable answering. I would talk to your cardiologist, and I would also talk with the dietitian or nutritionist in your doctor's office. I would suggest to also look at the pillars of a whole food, plant-based, no oil diet, as well as reducing or minimizing your salt, oil, and sugar intake. The readings by Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn might be very helpful for you to take a look at, but for the best reason, I'm going to say that a whole food plant-based diet is good for all of us. And eating 6 cups of greens a day is good for all of us, but I can't address your specific question, but I wish you well, and I hope that you'll keep coming back to our live events. Thank you so much. Oh, Chris, when I read this question earlier this morning, this question is from Chris, and he asked me to solve a disagreement. And I thought, oh, this is a lot of pressure for somebody who's sitting in their kitchen doing a live event with Rouxbe. So Chris's question had to do with tofu. And I think most of you know that Benjamin Franklin is responsible for bringing the idea of tofu to America. And living in Philadelphia, I kind of feel as though tofu is more important than a cheesesteak or a pretzel. So should extra firm tofu receive a dry or wet marinade before it is breaded and air fried? So I'm a person who likes very, very dry tofu. The drier, the more delicious it is. I also like a tofu that has a lot of flavor. So I would suggest, I'm not sure what size you're cutting your steaks or cubes into, but I think a marinade is always the best way to add lots of flavor to your tofu. I'm also a person that likes to drain their tofu in a dish towel, kitchen towel in the refrigerator for a couple of hours to get out some of that extra moisture. But after it's marinated, then I would use the dry rub. Then I would bake with it. And I think that it would be a most successful dish. And I feel as though I have become the tofu mediator. So I'm curious to hear how this dish comes out for you, but I say marinade with dry rub. And I'm going to stick to that. Thanks so much for your question. I really appreciate it. This question is from Jerry H., who has recently switched to a whole food plant-based diet. And she would like to understand what type of flour to use for baking items. This is sweet. Just when I think I have all the flours covered in my pantry, I find a recipe with another type of flour. So last week, I met an old friend for lunch. And with all the love in my heart, my friend thinks I'm a bit of a kook because I'm going now on 14 years of eating a whole food plant-based diet. So I made her some muffins, and they were an oatmeal muffin, and they had maple syrup in them and a little lemon to, help activate the sodium bicarb. And I put some dried cranberries in them, and they were really delicious, and some walnuts on top. And let her know, I made the mistake of letting her know that they were gluten-free because I made from scratch oat flour. So for all of my baking, and I would describe my baking as a rather rustic, wholesome baking type. My muffins are rustic. My banana bread has a lot of heft to it. I'm not making light, beautiful, delicate desserts. I'm making wholesome desserts. So I like oat flour. I think oat flour works really, really beautifully. If King Arthur has a whole plethora of flours, and if you go to their website, they have a listing of what flour is good for what. But I'm kind of basic in that I don't want to have 47 bags of flour in my freezer, but I don't mind having a half-gallon jug of oats to make my own oat flour in my Vitamix. So I think you just have to explore a little bit more and find what works best for you. Um, I always like to say to people that if you give whole food plant-based a chance, it's kind of like riding a bicycle. The better you become at it, or like doing yoga. The more that you practice yoga, the better you become at it. So let us know how you make out there, Jerry. We'll be happy to hear what you have to say. The next question is from Lisa G. She has a bunch of frozen pumpkin in her freezer, and she wants to know what to do with it. So to me, I'm seeing a beautiful spicy pumpkin puree soup, maybe seasoned with some ginger and a little orange juice, maybe a little white pepper. I'm seeing a soup. I also saw muffins that I would make with oat flour, muffins or a pumpkin bread. I think that the soup baking domain might be your two best ways to use that, but that's what screams out to me. The other thing that you could do with it is make a pumpkin hummus. And so you would mix the pumpkin with some hummus and with some garbanzo beans, or you could even get some pre-made hummus and take a shortcut, because sometimes a shortcut is the best way to get someone to eat something that you're making. And season it, put it in your food processor, and make a beautiful pumpkin hummus. You could also make a dessert hummus with that pumpkin. I'll stop. Okay, I'll stop. But you get my idea. The selections are endless. So I hope that you have fun with that, Lisa, and I want to hear what exactly it is that you are going to make. So thanks for that great question. Our next question comes from Jared R. Oh, Jared is the person who wants to know about fenugreek. And fenugreek is, it's actually a seed. I prefer using it ground, sometimes for added flavor before I use it in a recipe or before I even grind it. I will soak it overnight in some water. I'll save that water to use as part of the ingredient and then just smash it up, either with a mortar and pestle or just add it to the dish. But it has lots and lots of sort of like, it's like an omni spice because you can use it in curry and lentil stew. If you don't have fenugreek and it calls for it in a recipe, no need to fret. You can use mustard seeds and maple syrup, or you could use maple syrup because the taste of fenugreek itself has the taste of yellow mustard and maple syrup. So I think you can also find it ground if that's helpful to you. But that was a very good question. Very good question. Hold on a second. This, these are just things that I like, but this company here, Pride of, and they do different geographic regions. So I happen to love this Tunisian harissa that they make. Sometimes you want to get used to spices and aren't sure what will complement them. I suggest to go to Burlap and Barrel, which is a very informative spice site, as well as Penzi, which also is very informative. And I always find I learn so much when I go to those websites. So good luck, and let us know what you decide to do, Jared, with those, with the fenugreek that you have. Dry rub, relating to what, Lisa G? A dry rub, usually you'll see them in the spice section of the grocery store, and it will say dry rub for steak or dry rub for chicken. So you want to read and see what the spice content is and if it's something that you might like. And for me personally, to make certain that the sodium level is not too high. But a dry rub on tofu is really, really delicious. So this is from David A. And David, I sort of chortled a little bit when I reviewed this question, and I'm going to tell you why. First, one of my favorite dishes to make in a hurry, quick dish, is ditalini, which is a little tubular pasta. It's maybe about half an inch rather, in size. And I like to make it with either peas or spinach. And I save a little bit of the pasta water, and then I add nutritional yeast and maybe some oregano or whatever suits my fancy. So I posted a picture of it a few weeks ago on social media, and someone said, could I have the recipe, please? And this is the recipe I gave her. Cook pasta, add vegetables, favorite spices, nutritional yeast, eat. So I like to say that I think it's really important that we start to think outside the recipe, to sort of rely on instincts or remembering what a family member used historically in a dish that you really loved. So in this case, I'm going to give you all the confidence in the world and say, yes, that you will. If I were making a spaghetti sauce, I would not add to it Chinese 5 spice, because actually it might taste good. We don't know, but it's experimenting. It's cooking with what you feel comfortable. We all have our favorite 5 spices that we like to cook with, and with oregano and basil and onion and garlic, you can either cook French, Italian, or Mexican and still have them taste totally delicious. So I think cultures rely on one another for recipes, and I'm just going to say, get yourself some new spices and have a lot of fun. That was a great question, though. What is the ratio of baking soda to water when cleaning fruits and vegetables? I use vinegar instead of baking soda because I had found long ago that when you do use baking soda, even if you wipe them well, it can leave that dry white silt, which discourages people from wanting to eat it. So if you have a quart of water, I would add a tablespoon of white vinegar and let the vegetables or fruit soak in those. So that's my recommendation. I'm not a fan of baking soda, but I would use probably the same ratio, a quart of water to a tablespoon of baking soda. Got to get those fruits and vegetables clean. This question is from Carolyn H., and this is another great question. What is the healthiest non-stick surface to use when cooking? I like ceramic, and I have never found ceramic to peel or crack. I think the other part of using perhaps ceramic is how you clean them and what gentle surfaces and soaps and such that you use, and nothing too abrasive. I'll be very honest with you. I have grown up loving Brillo, and now use other things that are a little bit gentler, but Brillo was a rich part of my culinary history as the granddaughter of two chefs. So ceramic is my final answer. Okay, and this is, where will there be a whole food plant-based baking course? Gee, Amanda, that is a great question. We have the wonderful, wonderful Essential Vegan Desserts by Fran Costigan, which teaches lots and lots of baking basics in terms of how to be a better baker, which I think is an important thing. Many of you know that I have worked for the Esselstyns for several years and spent a lot of time in the kitchen with Jane and Ann. So my own personal mode of baking contains no oil, no refined sugar, and no salt either. So that's a great question. Maybe that's something I can take to our team when we discuss adding new programs, but very good idea. Thank you. Good question. This is from Catherine R., who's just getting started. Am I able to recommend a good chef's knife? I am. I can. So I have a really expensive knife that I never use, but now I'm going to show you. This is a knife by a company called Cutco. And there's a reason why I like my Cutco knife, and that's because about every 6 weeks, I get an email from the Cutco guy saying, I'm going to be at this address. Come for your free knife sharpening. Now, because I am a Rouxbe graduate, I do have a whetstone that I use to sharpen my knives very regularly, but I always feel more confident when I go see the Cutco guy. I think this knife was around $150, and I use it every single day. I also have a Cutco paring knife, which I love when I'm working small and just want to, dice something really beautifully. But I'm also going to tell you this. I got this Cuisinart knife at Marshall's for $5.99, and keeping it sharpened and using it regularly, it does just as good a job. So it's your budget. It's what you're looking for. It's how you want to hold things. I happen to love the handles on these. I'm left-handed. I have big hands, and these both fit me well. So Cutco is good. You can go, very expensive, top of the line. I'm not sure exactly what you're using it for, but sharpening is the most important thing. Sharpening and cleaning it well. So that's a very good question, and I wish you well, Catherine, in all of your future chopping endeavors. This is from Jane B. Hello, Jane. She enjoys adding salt to the recipes. I am trying, but concerned that this might add too much sodium. Do you have a salt alternative you recommend? So I'm teaching a class tomorrow, and I was doing my prep work, and we know that a teaspoon of salt, we're going to do roundup math here, a teaspoon of salt has 2,000 milligrams of sodium. We know now that the World Health Organization is recommending that people eat no more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium per day. If you use Chinese takeout and you have one packet, that teaspoon has 750 milligrams of sodium in it. So my point is, a teaspoon of salt has 2,000 milligrams, and a teaspoon of soy sauce has 700 or 750 milligrams. So try using a soy sauce. I would suggest to use a light soy. The tamaris are now coming out in 25% less sodium, 50% less sodium. I often tell people just dilute it with water. And, a couple of months ago, my husband and I went out for dinner, and I ordered my favorite vegetable, which is Brussels sprouts. And when they came to the table, I said to him, oh my gosh, these things are so salty. And he said, well, maybe it's because you don't use salt. And I said, no, I'm going to send them back. And the food server, who was very kind, said, okay, I'll take them back. And then the chef came out and he was like, whoa, I don't know what happened to those Brussels sprouts, but there was a lot of salt in those. So salt is an acquired taste. Cut back each day, and you'll certainly enjoy the real true flavor of vegetables and such. And remember that a tablespoon of nutritional yeast does contain 80 milligrams of sodium. So you are getting sodium in many, many different ways. And staying away from processed foods is one way, but always reading the label is the best. Just have to break up with the salt. But it's always a good question. I never tire from answering it. So thank you for that. Oh, we have a follow-up about the convection oven question. How do you adjust baking times for breads, cakes, cookies, etc.? I am the type of when I bake, first of all, go back to that owner's manual about your convection stove. I understand that you would want to decrease the cooking time by at least 5 minutes to begin with, or you may want to lower the temperature a little bit. I think it comes back to knowing your oven and knowing what works for you best. So when I get that convection oven, I'm going to be so excited that I'm going to ask Patrick if I can do a whole class on cooking with my new convection stove. So thanks for that, Kathy. Oh, right. Amelia has the best question. And first of all, congratulations to Amelia for getting off of 3 medications and for losing 20 pounds. And what it has done for her is it has excited her to want to explore a new career, and that is that of a health coach. So I have 3 recommendations, and again, congratulations, because your passion will be your best marketing tool. What you believe in, when I was a school teacher, my school head always used to say to me, Teacher Char, teach what you know, do what you love. And I have kind of made that as more or less a life motto. So I'm not sure which Rouxbe program you are in. I know that many people who take forks over knives go on to working as private chefs, go on to do seminars and stuff like that. I do believe that the Plant Pro course really helps to situate you for working in a professional kitchen, for creating your own website and teaching classes, cooking for others, et cetera, et cetera. So I would begin with making an outline of what it is that you want to do. Set your goals and objectives. Go talk to people. And oftentimes on this broadcast, I have said that I volunteered a lot in the beginning. And this was the one story I wanted to share. About 5 or 6 years ago, I donated an in-home cooking class for 4. And when I donate that, I always say, whole food, plant-based, no oil, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it scares people away and no one redeems it, or sometimes somebody has heart disease and they jump on it. So I donated the gift, and about 5 years later, I got a call from the executive director. Her husband had been diagnosed with heart disease and she with cancer. And would I be able to come to their home and sort of give them cooking 101? And I set up an appointment with a physician friend of mine who does this for a living. And then she got really sick, and her husband called me and said, can you cook with us for a week? So getting back to say that being a volunteer, volunteering at events, go to your physician's office, who's so proud of you, by the way, and drop off some whole food muffins or some hermit oatmeal cookies or something like that. Go to a lot of events, set those goals and objectives for yourself. But I have to say, I had a post a couple of weeks ago on the Rouxbe Facebook page that I have 12 classes to teach in 8 weeks. And I was not feeling overwhelmed, feeling like, wow, this is really exciting and hard work really pays off. But just follow that passion, and Sonia, you will feel like $1,000,000. Two other things. One would be the eCornell course, which is heavy duty science based behind the China study. And it's actually from the electronic courses of Cornell through the T. Colin Campbell Institute for Plant-Based Nutrition. And then there is a program from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Years ago, it used to be in New York City, but now, of course, you can take those courses online. So they would be two recommendations that I would strongly support. I've done eCornell and, of course, Rouxbe. And I also want to say, I like to give a little shout out to the Waste Not program. The Waste Not program is a program of the James Beard Foundation through Rouxbe, and the course is free. And there's a whole other aspect of things to learn, not just about plant-based cooking, but really how to practice full food utilization, which will come in handy to you because you want to be cost effective when you buy your food, when you create your food, so that your margins are good and you're actually making some money. So just a little shout out to Waste Not, which I really love. Hope that answered your question. And again, Sonia, congratulations to you. Oh, this is from Carrie J, who had an eggplant question. And, people always say to me, oh, how do you cook your eggplant? How do you cook your tofu? How do you make it dry? And I always say, oh, the same way my grandmother did. She took a little colander, put the eggplant in there, and then covered it with a dish and a plate and an iron and maybe a gallon jar of olive oil so that all of the moisture from the eggplant would fall out. So regarding eggplant, which I totally love, this is an aerated sheet pan, and maybe you can see it. I can see you through here. I've had this pan for years and never knew what to do with it until I became plant-based. You want to do one thing, and I suggest to draining it, leaving the skin on because that's where all the nutrition is, and cutting the steaks to about a 1/2 inch in size, because once the water drains out, you're going to have a fillet of eggplant. So that's the first thing that I would suggest. And then what you can do with it is first dredge it in a flour that you like, and then dredge it in some plant milk, and then some breadcrumbs, whatever kind of breadcrumbs that you like. I have seen at the market whole wheat panko breadcrumbs. I love the crunch of panko. So it is a dredge in flour, moisture, and then your final topping. And then put them on a sheet like this and bake them in the oven. If you go back to the roasting exercise where it discusses how when vegetables are too close together or you place them on top of one another, they will steam rather than roast. So when you would lay out your eggplant, they would not be touching, and there would be room and space between each one of them. Or you can put them in the air fryer where they would come out delightful and delicious. And you could use them to make a plant-based eggplant parmesan without the parmesan, or you could make a Napoleon. I mean, the possibilities are absolutely endless, but I hope that that is helpful to you. Okay. This is a question about whether or not you have to adjust the temperature if you live at 900 feet elevation. From what I understand and what I have studied, if you live above 2,000 feet, that's when you have to start adjusting the temperature of your oven as well as its cooking time. So you might remember from a life prior to being whole base that you would see the back of a cake box and you wondered, well, what is this about? But I wouldn't worry about 900 feet. It's still a very good question. Kathy, I think that we answered the question about the baking. But when you do bake with a convection oven, you do have to decrease the temperature. And my suggestion would start at 5 degrees. And we all know ways to discover when baked goods are done by what they look like on the rim or how they are to touch. So I think that experimenting and looking again at the owner's manual might be a very helpful thing to use. So this is from Rebecca, who's looking for very good protein sources for her whole food plant-based diet. Um, she shares that she has several allergies, which include dark beans, as well as, well, dark beans. So if you're allergic to dark beans, I don't know if you would be allergic to navy white beans or to garbanzo. But for example, a serving of Bragg's amino acids has a gram of. We're back. Sorry. There is a gram of protein in amino acids. There's proteins in every vegetable, tofu, if you eat nut butters. Um, the list is endless. If you're not opposed to eating tofu, that works out very, very well. And hummus is of course a white bean, but easy to get your protein. There are some now pastas that have added protein to them, and even commercial brands of certain plant milks have added protein to them as well. So I think it might take a little bit of discovery in the grocery store to look at labels and read how many grams are in a serving. Nuts, of course, seem to be a favorite for many people. However, if you are limited to nuts, that might not be the best thing for you to do. But I think that's a very good question. But just remember to read all of the labels and look for some that might have some extra protein in them. And just remember, broccoli has protein in it. Well, this is from Linda Kay. And she's sharing that she thinks this question may be out of scope. She's going to be traveling with her dog for 3 days and can only stop at fast food places on the trip. What are healthy food options as typical fast food places? So I don't know if you're talking about like a Burger King or a McDonald's. I personally have never had a Beyond Burger, but I understand that the Whopper chain, so is that Burger King, has them. Most fast food chains have salads. I would suggest to pack with you some cans of beans. There are things like shelf stable hummus that you can enjoy. But I think having some fresh produce in a cooler might be good for you, and maybe stocking up on some of your favorite foods so that you can enjoy the road trip. We have a store here, well, now they're from Florida to the tip of New Jersey, called the Wawa. And at the Wawa, I can go in and get a vegetable hoagie on a whole wheat roll with extra vinegar and no oil. And it's absolutely delicious. So you might want to go to the websites and see what kind of offerings they have. And I think you're going to get through the trip, and I think that the dog will as well. So it's not out of scope. It's a good, real question, because we all travel and we're all on the road. And I hope you have a safe journey. So thank you so much for your question. This question is from Vicky G. Hi, Vicky. Can you talk about waterless cookware? Is it healthy for you? I don't know what waterless cookware is. And if you can send us a note to add to the question, because I may know it as another name. Very good question. Should we use a sharpener and a honer? So I find that my honing slab works just a lot better than using, even though I have used them, a regular sharpener. I think that you get more of it just sharpens more evenly. And I think that using a honer is just a better idea. But a sharpener is better than no sharpening at all. So hope that's helpful to you. This is from Cynthia D, who has an older chef knife. I don't have a whetstone. I'm new to forks over knives. Congratulations. And think perhaps the stone I have, and perhaps the stone may do the trip to sharpen it. Would you recommend any specific brands for a whetstone or a knife sharpener? I don't even remember the name of the honing slab that I got, but it's now 8 years old and it's serving me well. So why don't you look and see whatever the brand of your knife is, if you remember the brand of your knife, look and see if they have a counterpart of a honer or a knife sharpener that you could use with that specific knife. But we have to keep our knives sharpened. That we pay a lot of money for them, and they have a big job to do. And if you are doing the vegetable dicing exercise, having a good knife is what makes that assignment such a success for you, and also a good confidence builder. This is from Carlene M. Can she use wet oat groat pulp from making oat milk in place of oat flour to make muffins? What adjustment should I use to the recipe? So you've made your oat milk. So my first question would be, do you think that some of the flavor of the oats themselves would be in the oat milk? So if you wanted to use that, I would dry it out, and then I would put it into my Vitamix and make a flour out of it. It's going to be experimentation for you. However, you could just take the groats as they are and put them into your Vitamix and mix with your other ingredients and sail with the wind and see how that goes for you. I mean, I don't think you'd have to make any adjustments to the recipe. I don't know what the other ingredients are in the recipe that you're using, but I would say fly with the wind and see where it takes you. So if you have a cup of wet groat, I would just equal that to a cup of oats, because it's probably more or less the same. Again, going back to that recipe thing, fly with the wind, try it out, experiment, and then have kind of like your own eureka moment that says, oh, I figured this out. This is my new recipe that I just created. And that's how we start to develop recipes, because we thought outside the box and we did something that was kind of rogue. We didn't follow the recipe exactly, but we did use really good ingredients. So I like the question, Carlene, because I love full food utilization. Okay, we're back to Loretta. Sorry, I just started watching, so I don't know if anyone has asked the recommendation about best pots and pans. It was the lead question, Loretta. It was the top of the hour question, and the winning answer was stainless steel. My favorite, best to cook with. It's what our mothers and grandmothers cooked with, except, quote, parentheses, there was that time when they started cooking with aluminum because it was cheaper. And aluminum is something that you totally, totally want to avoid at all costs. And first place was stainless steel. And then we had cast iron. And then we discussed ceramic. So those were our top 1, 2, 3. And thanks for asking the question again. I'm sure someone appreciates that as well as myself. This is from Lily B. Since she learned how to make dates and apricot paste, it fills, oh, this is nice. It fills her sweet tooth on a daily basis. But I wonder if it is too much sugar. Well, I don't know how much date paste you're eating or what you're doing with it. It's better than using jam or jelly because it has only natural sugars in them. But sugar is sugar is sugar, except that there in the apricots there is potassium, and in the dates there is vitamin K, so they're a little bit more nutrient dense. If you don't want to eat the paste, you could just have 1 or 2 pieces each of fruit, because dried fruits have a higher range of sugar content than when you eat fresh fruit. But that is a very good question, and mango paste is another one to add to your list. So thank you for sharing that question. So this is from Kathleen. She's asking about cutting boards. So I'm going to show you 2 things here. Hopefully I don't drop them. So the first thing is, pardon me for blocking my view. If you have, I don't know if you can see this or not, but at the very top it says onions. So it's a good idea to designate a cutting board or a cutting board top or bottom to onions only. And that's because no matter how well you might clean out this plastic, you don't want to spend $6 on a container of strawberries and then cut them only to have them taste like they were enrobed in onion juice. So I don't mind. I like using a synthetic cutting board. I have a million cutting boards. I have wooden ones, which I love. I have a beautiful cutting board from Plants Only, which is decorative and beautiful and always makes me feel like I'm cooking at my best. But then I have this thing that fits under my countertop, and it stays secure. And these little rubber stoppers here keep it from moving around. And also, I wanted to say, hold on for 1 second. Maybe you can see how that works. If you are using a cutting board, if you put a dampened cloth underneath, folded and flattened, it will prevent your cutting board from moving around, because you never want to cut your fingers. So wood, plastic, the important thing about using wood is that you have to treat it well. I clean mine with lemons and salt, and it gets out any food debris because you don't want it to harbor any kind of food bacteria. But the question was, which is better, wood or synthetic? Well, I mean, I can throw those synthetic ones in the dishwasher, and I never have to worry about any kind of contamination. Tomorrow I'm teaching a class in person with the Charlie cart, and I think some of you know that I'm a Charlie cart instructor. And the Charlie cart comes with small mats of cutting boards, and they have red for meat, green for vegetables, yellow for bread, and blue for fish. We use them all just for vegetables, but they're plastic too, because you can clean them really, really well. So nothing looks as pretty though as my Plants Only cutting board. So it's a very good question. This is from Aaron W. Maybe this is a question we can toss over to Eric, because I don't cook salmon, but I think that when I cook tofu, I do love the baked tofu recipe that we offer that has the marinade that's made with liquid smoke, maple syrup, garlic powder, and a couple of other things. And it really renders it with a delicious, delicious taste. So I might go with that. But perhaps Eric is the best person to ask that question. Okay. So this is, thank you, Vicki, for answering the question. Pardon me while I read. Waterless cookware is from the Kitchen Crafters. You use no oil and only a bit of water. It has a tight seal and cooks your vegetables quickly. They are also induction ready. Well, I'm going to go research that because I have never heard of them. It would make sense to me if you're only using a little bit of water, because the nutrients aren't going to cook out into the 4 cups of water that might be in your pot or pan. And I think that might be, Vicki, the message that you might be looking at for your answer. Thank you for bringing that back. And looking at who's in attendance today, that might be Vicki, the cookbook author, who was featured on our social media page not too long ago. And by the way, please make sure that you're following Rouxbe on Instagram. We have 2 sites. We have one that's called Rouxbe Plants, and that's designated only to plant-based dishes, as well as the delectable desserts from Frank Costigan's Essential Vegan Desserts. And then we have another one called Rouxbe, which is not plant-based. So follow them both because they interchange information a lot. And the other good thing is many students are now being featured with their work and their photos and little bios. And I think a few weeks ago, we featured a physician in Stanford, California, a surgeon, as a matter of fact, who is presently enrolled in the Pro Cook course, and she's doing tons and tons of teaching. Her name is Dr. Carrie Marbaugh. So do go to the Rouxbe Plants to check out her bio and seeing all of the wonderful work that she's doing. So what goes over millet? Oh, I think anything goes over millet. I've never met a grain that I didn't like. You know the recipe we have for the braised coconut chickpeas with spinach and stewed tomatoes. Millet would be perfect for that. Wherever you use rice or farro or anything else like that, or quinoa, I think millet would be perfect. So, well, it looks like I'm trying to think if I have gotten all of my show. One last thing. Tomorrow I'm teaching a class, and I have this little scale here. And the reason why I am teaching this class is we're going to talk about tear weight. I'm trying seriously to have people buy more in bulk. So tomorrow when they come to class, they're each bringing a container so that they can weigh the tear weight of a jar or a plastic container, so that when they buy their beans in bulk and they get to the cashier, they can say, the tear on this is 12, or the tear is 14, or those little teeny weeny ones where you put your salad dressing is a 1 tear. You want to be in the know. We want to bring home less plastic. And the other part of having the scale is we are using, making beans from scratch and then going to plant them in jars, because from a 1 pound bag of beans, you can get anywhere between 4 to 6 can equivalents. And to save money and be better stewards and have less food waste, having a scale is a very, very good thing. I think with that, I'm going to close with, as an instructor for Rouxbe, it's very enjoyable to read all of your assignments, and using descriptive words in what you have to say is very helpful. Telling me that something is salty or it was so sour that it made me cringe. That's a lemon assignment right there. Using words like yummy and it was really good aren't very descriptive. It does tell me that you really liked it, but think of some words, some adjectives to really describe your good work, because personally myself, I want to know everything about your assignment from that mise en place until your very last photo. And most of the time, one of the requirements is to ask for a garnish. So don't forget the garnish, because it is an important part of the dish, because we eat with our eyes first. So I'm closing out today, the second day of May, thanking Patrick in the control booth for putting everything together. And I'm very appreciative for everyone who came to the class today. And signing off from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, I am Char Nolan. Bye now.